made by the Milwaukee Bucks. Legs, the defending champs in.
Yeah, he just, his strength overall. He came out aggressively. You know, Boston's the best defensive team in the league, and they provided enough bodies in front of him. He just plays through the contact, and he did it again in the first half this one.
He was doing his thing, then he was finding open men. That's Bobby Portis, who's starting now. He had 15.
Yeah, and I put the number at 12 to 15 made threes per night they have to have, and they made 9 in the first half.
And look at Giannis there with the block on Jason Tatum. Milwaukee a 10-point lead at halftime, and then just too much Giannis in the fourth quarter. He would score 24.
Yeah, if you don't bring bodies now, he'll just take his time, and this is something he's added to his game. The turnaround, step back jumper, the turnaround jumper in the post, the finesse component is there for him.
Drew Holiday in transition. He had 25. Brad Stevens has to catch a train. 6.5 to go. Bucks up 14. Watch this. This is a playoff game. Giannis throws it off the glass to. Oh! Are you serious? Can you believe he did that in a playoff game?
In any game, much less a playoff game. That's something you typically see in an all-star game. Giannis does it at the most important time of the season.
Bucks with a resounding game one. Jalen Brown, what the actual heck happened?
We got to be the harder playing team. And tonight they had a chip on their shoulder. They came in with an edge. They were locked in, and they punched us in the mouth.
They punched them in the mouth. And Wendy, you had in our call this morning a fascinating explanation of the reason why.
They were not ready for this Bucks team after playing the Nets for a week. I know that Nets series was a lot of high level playmaking. I'm not going to take that away, but the Nets just don't play defense anywhere near in the league of the Milwaukee Bucks. Ime Udoka, the Celtics coach, said that he felt his team was caught off guard. Jalen Brown, who had 7 turnovers in this game, 7 turnovers, said they surprised them. The Celtics had a scouting report. They know the personnel. They know what they were playing. But the actual act of playing against the Bucks and the way that they play defense versus the way they had gotten comfortable with playing the Nets, where everything was much easier. And without Chris Middleton, the Bucks are playing huge. With Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and Giannis, it's one of the biggest lineups you'll see in the NBA today. In the 75-year history of the Celtics franchise, they've never made as few two-point baskets. They made 10 as they did in this game. A huge advantage for the Bucks to get game one.
I think that is a factor here. Look, Middleton is a great player. He's their second best player, and somewhere along the line they will miss him. But he just pointed out, those 3 guys are starting in the front line. They're enormous, and that clearly was a factor last night.
At one point in the game, Boston had taken 49 threes and 29 twos. That's directly correlated to Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo being in the paint, and then Bobby Portis even out there at the same time. So what you're looking at visually, if you're Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, there just doesn't look like there's any room back there to get to the rim, so you end up settling for threes. I just thought Milwaukee did a great job of using Boston's overreaction at times to the paint defensively against them. Brooklyn couldn't do it because they don't have the three-point shooting. The Bucks have a stable of guys that can hurt you, and they all did it yesterday. Connaughton, Grayson Allen, Drew Holiday, Bobby Portis. Brook Lopez didn't even get invited to the party from the three-point line. That's going to come too. For me, that's going to be the biggest differentiating factor between these two teams. You want to load up on Giannis? First of all, he's still going to do his thing because he's so strong. But more importantly, he's going to beat you now as a passer because of all the shooting around him.
But you guys stay close here. I'm going to get to my football guys, but later in this hour, we'll talk about what the Celtics can do to sort of turn this thing back. Plus, we'll look ahead to tonight's games. All that is
have elected to just go super big. They start Bobby Portis alongside Giannis and Brook Lopez. Nobody plays like that anymore. It's just unheard of. And the Celtics were shell-shocked. They went in there and passes that they were easily able to throw against every other team, but particularly the Nets. They just couldn't get it. There were balls getting deflected all over the place. They had like 8 or 9 turnovers in the second quarter alone. And you could just tell they were uncomfortable. And all I got to tell you is this about the size and the difficulty that they had inside. In the 75-year history of the Celtics franchise, the storied history, all those games, all those playoff games, they never made as few two-point baskets as they did in that game one on Sunday, because they got tired of going in there, had no success. They just chucked three-pointers, which is exactly what the Bucks wanted them to do. I have no doubt they'll recalibrate, but it was an eye-opener, stepping up in class from the way the Nets play defense to the way the Bucks do.
Wendy, let's go ahead and bring Brooklyn back into this thing just like you did, because it was fascinating for me. I'm watching Giannis, and Giannis didn't have a great game, even though he did have a triple-double. Right? I mean, 24 points on 25 shots, 13 rebounds, 12 assists. but the physical dominance of Giannis. And I know when people get into basketball minds, you go to the best player in the world, that always equates to skill set, Wendy. But watching the way Boston threw multiple people at Kevin Durant, even though I think Kevin Durant's skill set is better than Giannis's, the physicality and the mindset seemed like it was just lacking to a degree, right? But when I watched Giannis, it didn't matter if it was Grant Williams. He threw Jason Tatum to the damn ground. Jaylen Brown, it didn't matter who they put on him. He was physically imposing his will every possession. That's why I think he's the best player in basketball.
Yeah, so, I mean, to be clear, the Nets series was an incredibly high level of playmaking. The Nets were making a lot of plays. They just weren't defending, just to be clear. It wasn't that the Nets were pushovers, it's just completely different. When you play against Kevin Durant, his skill is jaw-dropping. The way he makes shots under certain circumstances, you just throw your hands up. Giannis hit you like a freight train. And there were a couple of possessions yesterday. There was one in particular where he went in transition and scored on one of his Euro step moves. And I was watching it. I think Jaylen Brown was on him. I was like, Jaylen played spectacular defense on that play and was in complete backpedal mode and got scored over, because that's why this guy is amazing. And that's why he's LeBron-like in my viewpoint, that his ability to just physically dominate opposing teams despite the defensive setup is why his team is always going to have a chance. You know, year after year, LeBron won playoff series where he didn't have home court advantage because he could come into a building. It didn't matter the way the officials were calling the game, although in this game yesterday, the officials allowed physicality, which favored the Bucks. We'll see about tomorrow. But it didn't matter the way the officials were playing the game. It didn't matter whether he was hitting his outside shot. He was able to physically be imposing and overwhelm opponents, which is why the fact that LeBron won a playoff series in 30 consecutive series, or a road game in 30 consecutive series, one of the finest stats of his career, because his skill set overwhelmed the situation. That's the kind of player that Giannis is, and his skill set overwhelmed the situation in game one, and here you go. They take home court advantage right out of the gate.
Brian Windhorst, ESPN NBA Insider, joining us this morning on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. How concerned should the Celtics be over Marcus Smart's shoulder and quad injuries, Brian?
Key, more about the quad. The shoulder was a stinger. I've never had one. Maybe you have. I'm sure it's going to affect him for a little while. The quad is something that has been on and off throughout the season. He first had the quad injury in January. He missed a handful of games. He also got COVID at that time. So it's really hard to know exactly how much he would have missed with that quad injury. So it was already there. He got hit on it twice in the first half. And in the second half, he was having trouble getting himself up off the court, because the act of pushing up on his legs was bothering him so much. And you could see that he was kind of protecting it. Now, I have no doubt he is going to play, but you need him to be able to dig down defensively. Obviously, one of the great defensive players of this generation, defensive player of the year right now. So that you guys know, quad injuries, you can ice them and treat them and get stim or whatever, but they're not going to go away overnight. So I would say it's more the quad than the shoulder.
Brian, I've had both. I've had the quad injury where we get the ice and the stem, but the blood doesn't circulate, and that thing all of a sudden turns into a ball, and you're trying to rub it out and do all that, and it hurts like hell, and if it stiffens up, you're in trouble. But also the stinger side of things, yes, it's a stinger. You will go numb on that, whatever shoulder it was, but it also affects the neck area as well. So he's going to probably have some stiffness in his neck as well as in his shoulder, and I'm sure dribbling a basketball is going to be difficult at times.
Hey, Wendy, we've
go
had
ahead, Max.
No, please, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, please.
I just love the fact that they call it a stinger in the NFL. It's a stinger. It's a neurological thing. I can't feel. I'm temporarily paralyzed. Shake it off. Go back in there in 5 minutes. Hey, Wendy, the call on Draymond, we've been kind of debating it today. Right? Like, I see it as a flagrant. I thought they got it right. It was hits him and then yanks him down. The intention is clear. Kia, you can hear Kia going, it's a stinger. Shake it off and get in there. Anyway, Wendy, where are you? Is that a flagrant or a reputation call?
Yeah, so I know that it's tempting to call it a reputation call, and I know that's what Draymond said. By the way, I thought it was hilarious that Draymond immediately went back and did an emergency